Hi there.
Hi.
I am Allison Weiner. I'm a designer at Chronicle Books. Um,
And I'm Bridget Watson-Payne, and I'm an editor at Chronicle Books. Uh, we both work on art and design projects. So first we're going to tell you a little bit about Chronicle.
yep, here we go. Now, the share screen is not where it was. Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, so Chronicle Books, this is the outside of our beautiful building that we haven't been in for several months. We are an independent publisher based in San Francisco since 1967, the Summer of Love. So I'll just read a little bit of this little blurb. From award-winning children's titles and cookbooks to irresistible stationery and acclaimed art and design books, we publish distinctive books and gifts for every occasion. We see things differently. And this is our mission statement. Inspired by the enduring magic of books, we cultivate and distribute exceptional publishing that is instantly recognizable for its spirit and creativity. Our collaborations spark the passions of adults and children worldwide, encouraging them to explore, connect, and see things differently. And this is at least some of our company. I think this was taken like two or 3 years ago. And I am behind somebody's head in this picture, but I don't see Bridget. Oh, I see
I'm
Bridget.
way in the back
Yeah.
with a yellow cardigan.
Yeah, there is Bridget.
Also behind someone's
hair.
head.
Yeah. I think I'm somewhere behind this guy or maybe her. I can't remember. Okay, moving on. So this is a quick glimpse at some of our publishing. This is our 4 main categories of publishing: children's books, entertainment books, which covers a lot of different things, anything from humor to stuff about TV shows or movies or pot or Star Trek, yeah. Art, which is Bridget and my category that we're both in. Anything from artist monographs to more hands-on art instruction to stationery, illustrated stationery, and food and lifestyle, which covers cookbooks and home decor and life occasions like weddings or having a new baby. It's kind of the gist of that. And here you just see some of our best-selling titles from pretty much all categories.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our efforts toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everyone pretty much knows that the publishing industry has some pretty serious issues around this. Publishing staffs tend to be largely female and very white, and as a result, that is borne out in what you see, who you see getting published, what authors are published. So this year, Chronicle has undertaken some pretty serious efforts to start addressing this in a pretty major way, and we can go through a few of those. This is what I was talking about, the reality of the industry. There was a survey in 2019 run by Lee and Low Books that shows the industry overall, and it is 76% white, which is obviously a huge problem. And it is also 74% female. But what is interesting is that as you get up to the very tippy top, that number changes quite a bit. This is more for like the sort of run-of-the-mill workforce. So there's also some issues there, as you can see, as well as along some other demographics. So if we go forward, these are some initiatives that we're undertaking to affect change. We're looking at our employment and education. We're now working with an external diversity and inclusion consultant, and doing a lot of work with her and her company to update our hiring practices. If you go to the next one, we're looking long and hard at our publishing and the talent, who gets published, who are the authors, who are the designers, who are the photographers, who are the artists, illustrators, all of that, and creating tools and resources to help us publish a wider range of voices. If you go to the next one, we're also looking at our business partnerships. This is something people don't always think about, but that every company works within an ecosystem of other companies. Who are you giving your business to as a company? Who's catering your events? Who's printing your books? Who's doing all of these other things for you? Who's providing your office supplies? All of that you can look at. Are all the businesses you work with devoted to social responsibility in the same way that you want them to be? And beyond that, are you looking for businesses run by people of color, and so forth? So the next one, we're also looking at our donations, philanthropy, and community engagement. We've had a long, proud history of donations and philanthropy at Chronicle. We have an annual volunteering day. We donate both a lot of money and a lot of books every year, but we're creating a new emphasis on donating to Black-run and POC-run organizations, along particularly the lines of literacy and the arts. So we go to the next one. We're also just looking at all our brand communications, everything we put out there, not just our publishing, but all our marketing, our Instagram, our everything we're doing, and is it inclusive and is it accessible, in terms of readability, for disability, for vision, for hearing impaired, all of these things. You have to really think about what you're putting out there and whether it is accessible by everybody. So we're looking at that as well. Then I think next up, we're gonna jump away from the slides for a minute and into the interiors of our homes and tell you just briefly who we are and what we do at Chronicle and how we ended up where we are, and a little bit about how we work together. So you want to go first?
I would love to. So I have been at Chronicle, this is, I think, my 11th year. And by far the longest job I've ever held. I think before this, it was 9 months was the longest. Yeah. I spent a lot of time after graduating from college, not knowing what I wanted to do, having a lot of jobs in a lot of different industries, and very unexciting things. Anything from like office management to retail to restaurants. And at some point I realized that I was always making art on the side. And I realized that I didn't want to spend, the biggest chunk of my day doing something that didn't allow me any creativity and then go home and try to get it all in when I was exhausted. So I had this like light bulb moment where I was like, graphic design. I didn't really know very much about graphic design then. I just knew that it was something that it seemed like a nice fit. I was interested in photography and illustration. And I just went back, started taking adult ed classes, and eventually found myself in a degree program at California College of the Arts. And, a few years later, I was starting to work as a graphic designer and fell into Chronicle Books fellowship program. And from then on, I just knew I wanted to design books. And, the fellowship ended. At that time, it was a 6-month program. There were no opportunities for jobs. So I just told everybody there that when there was an opening that they had to let me know, and did some freelance for several months. And then there was an opening. So I elbowed my way in and they haven't gotten rid of me since. So, you know, I feel like from the beginning of not knowing what I wanted to do, I just, as time goes on, I've just been really enjoying graphic design more and more. And being at Chronicle just allows me to find out about so many weird and interesting subjects. You know, each project is like a different little lesson for me about what that book is about, and you know how to design it. And yeah.
It's awesome. I've never actually heard that story from you before, so I feel great getting to hear it too. Mine is kind of similar in some ways. I've been at Chronicle for 18 years, which is kind of unbelievable. And before that, it is also my by far longest job, and basically my entire adult career has been at Chronicle. Prior to working here, I was in grad school at San Francisco State. I got my master's in English Lit, and I did that because I loved books. I loved reading and I loved books, and I wanted to spend a couple years reading books. I wasn't an English major in undergrad, which I regretted, and I wanted to go back to school and get, you know, a chance to really dig in with the, you know, fiction and literature that I loved. Almost immediately I realized, I mean, mostly what people do with a master's in English is they teach. And I pretty quickly realized like I was not cut out for teaching. Much as I love talking like this, I don't think I could do it day in and day out in a classroom. And I realized that really I was there because I loved books, and what I wanted to do was make books. And I knew nothing about publishing, like zero. But I was like, I'm going to work in book publishing. And everyone said, okay, so you're going to have to move to New York, right? And I was like, no, I want to stay in San Francisco. I'm from here. I like it here. And it pretty quickly emerged that like the biggest game in town was Chronicle Books, and it was like, it became like the mecca, like the place I wanted to work. But there actually is a lot of publishing in the Bay Area. A lot of it is just really small and really weird and really niche. You know, I interviewed for 6 months after getting out of grad school. I interviewed at a legal publisher and spirituality publishers and feminist publishers and multicultural children's book publishers, and just all of these different interesting small, you know, companies that are around the Bay. Didn't get jobs at any of them because I didn't know what I was doing and I wasn't qualified. And eventually I got a job at Chronicle, which was like the holy land, answering the phone. I was a customer service representative. I had a little headset just like this one. And I dealt with people's, you know, bookstores problems, like their book shipment hadn't come, or it came, but all the books were damaged or something, for 2.5 years. It was kind of awful because you get yelled at a lot in customer service. But during that time, we used to have an in-house internship program where I got to go one day a week and work with one of the editors, which is what I really wanted to be doing, and learn more about the editorial department and how to do that job and get some experience. And then, similar to you, Allison, you just kind of keep hanging around, and then eventually an opening came up, and I was really lucky that the job that opened that I got was with the art book editor at the time. So I started working for him, assisting him, and then slowly but surely. Publishing career tracks tend to be long and slow. It's there's quite an apprenticeship period kind of built in. So bit by bit, time goes on, you find yourself doing the job that your boss was doing, you know, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. So that is how I got here. And yeah, we work on, both of us, on a lot of, we call it all art, but it's a lot of stuff that's not everyone always lumps under the heading of art, but we do. So it's graphic design, photography, illustration, fine art, occasionally a bit of architecture, you know, kind of anything pertaining to the visual arts falls into our world. And I work mostly on books, but some on stationery and formats. And we work with a bunch of other editors and designers in our group who, you know, work on those same kinds of projects, but everyone's kind of got their own specialty or interest.
Yeah.
And oh, the other thing we wanted to talk about, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say a little bit more about my role now, which I forgot before. I work on mostly books, kind of like Bridget, and some formats, which could be anything from stationery to a notebook or journal. And the question I get most often when people find out I do book design is, so you design covers? I'm like, yes, and the inside. It's so funny. I mean, because I think it's because most fiction books, you know, which a lot of people read, are just text inside. But Chronicles books are, you know, the insides are as exciting to look at as the outsides, because they're illustrated, or there's art, or, you know, there's just funky graphics. So it's the full kitchen and caboodle, you know, the inside, outside, upside down, all that.
Yeah, I think it's funny. So much of what's in people's minds about what books are and what publishing is, isn't exactly what we actually do all day. Like that, you know, people that hear book design, they think cover design. And in fact, our interiors are way more labor intensive
Yeah.
than the covers. And similarly, when people hear that you're a book editor, they think you're sitting there with your little red pencil marking up text like an English teacher, you know, like, oh, you need a comma, right? And I do occasionally do that. And whenever I do it, I crack up, because I'm like, this is what people think I do all day long. When in fact, editing visual books is just as much doing image edits or, you know, art direction, in fact, you know, to be a visual book editor, as it is, you know, the grammar English stuff, the writing stuff. And it really, so much of what we do is also project management. You know, that really what we're doing is moving something through, you know, all the different phases of its creation, because when you're making a book, you have to try really, really hard to make sure it's right and not full of mistakes, because once it's printed, that's it. You're kind of done until you maybe print more and you can fix something. But, oh, the other thing we were going to talk about briefly was just how we work together, how my world in editorial and Allison's world in design kind of intersect and overlap with one another. And in the earliest stage, that happens at our publishing group meetings. We're unusual in that all the people who work on the books are the people who make the decisions for the most part about what to publish. So all the editors, designers, production folks, marketing and publicity who are going to work on these art books that we make sit in a room together and, among other things, greenlight projects. You know, an editor will bring a project and say, hey, maybe we should do this. And everybody in that, you know, meeting functions as a board to pass the project or not, give us the green light or not. So the first time Allison and I work together on something is when we're in that meeting and I'm maybe pitching an idea, and then you're one of the folks, you know, giving your opinion, giving the, you know, yay or nay, your vote and your thoughts.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of my job, actually, because I feel like in a lot of design jobs, you're just kind of given the project, like a client comes to you and is like, design this, you know, but here in publishing and at Chronicle, we can actually give input on what we will end up designing, you know. So I'm always, you know, my first concern is like whether this is a good idea, whether, you know, people will want to buy this. But in the back of my head, there is something saying there, you know, I might end up designing this. Like, what?
Do I want to spend all this?
Yeah, do I want to spend like 9 months of my life working on this? So, but it's just invaluable to be there at the step one, and, you know, thinking about the design of the book, and if I have any suggestions or ideas that might make the structure of the book, you know, run more smoothly based on things I'm thinking of the design, I can share those opinions right then and there. And it's just amazing to be part of that process.
It's like the highlight of the week, really. It's like, you know, getting together with a bunch of creative people to decide what you're going to make next. It's really fun. And then once we've got a project going, I'm working on it at an earlier stage, and then at a certain point, we're actually going to go through step by step how we make a book. So we'll get to
should
that
I
in more
share that?
detail in a minute. Oh yeah, I mean, sure, go ahead.
Okay.
But basically, you know, at a certain point, once the content is ready to go to design, from there on out, if I'm the editor and Allison's the designer on a particular project, we're going to be working very collaboratively between the two of us, and then with the author, and then with the other team members at Chronicle, to put something together. It's always going to be really a team effort. It's one of those things. I think another misconception sometimes people have about publishing is that it's a very head down solo kind of work, because that is true to some extent. If you're sitting there banging out the design of the interior of a book, or if I'm sitting there, you know, working away on a manuscript, that is you sitting by yourself at your computer all alone. But so much of the rest of the process, as you'll see as we go through this, is extremely collaborative and extremely sort of person-to-person oriented, which I think is a piece that people think of it as more solitary maybe than it is.
Yes, and each
So
project.
let's go through these. Let's see.
Okay. Oops.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that each project has a team where there's an editor, a designer, a production developer, production designer, and managing editor. And that make team, we're all in contact with each other all the time, asking questions, finding out things, sharing, you know, designs, finding out the book specifications, and just working together as a team in each of our own specialties, taking the project through all of its stages. So you'll see that a bit as we start going through. So you want to start with the beginning
I feel like
stuff?
sometimes people ask, what do you actually... Sorry, I think we've got a little bit of a lag going, but I was just going to say, in terms of what we actually do all day, I think the extent to which what we do all day is send email and have meetings is can hardly be overstated, because, you know, that's how we collaborate. That's how we, you know, work together in order to, you know, make something happen. So, okay, so we're going to walk you through step by step, and I'm going to do sort of the early steps because that's where I'm more involved, and then Allison's going to do the second part where she's more involved. So first we get a book proposal. This is a book proposal right here that actually, for a book we actually published, this is what it looked like when it first came in. Sometimes this is what happens. An author or an author's agent is bringing us a project and saying, hey, let's do X. I want to do a book, and they've got it all thought out. We're fortunate that we also, in addition to the traditional book publishing, do a fair bit of talent scouting. So we're also often reaching out to people that we want to work with and saying, hey, you are really cool and talented, and we are interested in your work. Oh, hey, you have the book. That's amazing.
Yeah. Beginning.
So yeah, it started looking like this. It ended up looking, yeah. So sometimes we're reaching out to people and, you know, seeing if they have ideas, seeing if they want to pitch us, you know, if it's an artist that we're really excited about, or someone that, you know, has written a great article and we think that could be expanded into a book or something like that. So often it's reactive to things that are coming into us, but sometimes it's us seeking things out. And then the next step after that, which we'll get to in a second. Yeah, so I'm having some initial conversations with the author. I should pause here to say that most of our authors in art are not writers. A few are, got a few writers, but most of them are visual creatives. So an artist, a photographer, an illustrator, a designer, you know, someone of that ilk who's putting visual and written content together. So we're having some initial conversations. We're brainstorming. We're shaping the idea. We're making sure we're on the same page. And that what they want to do and what we want to do, you know, matches up. And then I'm taking it to that pub group board that we mentioned earlier for approval. And if I get it approved there, if everyone is like, yes, let's do it, then we make an offer. Book publishing usually runs, as people have questions about authorship quite often, so I'll answer that here as well. A traditional book publishing model, an author is paid in advance against royalties. And what that means is an advance is literally that. It's an advance. We're advancing them the money that they will eventually earn in royalties when the book is finished and starts selling in bookstores. But bear in mind, that's like a year to 2 years from now that this book is actually going to start selling and making money. And we, of course, know that for someone to sit and do all the work of making a book, making the content for a book, takes a lot of time, energy, maybe money. So we're advancing this money up front to the author, and effectively they have a bank account with Chronicle. So you've been paid your advance, your bank account is down in the red. You have a negative balance. Once the book actually does exist and starts selling and you earn a royalty on every copy that's sold, that bank account starts creeping back up. And then when you get to zero, you've earned back that advance that we paid you, and then it continues to sell and you start seeing royalty checks. So that a book can lead eventually to passive income, which can be an exciting thing for creative people to have. People also always ask me the question at this point, what if the book bombs? What if it never gets back up to 0? What if you never get out of the red? Do you have to give the advance back? And the answer is no. That is the author's money to keep forever. And so, you know, publishers are assuming a fair bit of risk when they sign up projects. And that's one of the reasons, you know, that board meeting is so important and exciting, is because we're deciding what we want to take a risk on. So I make an offer, there's some negotiation, we do a contract, okay, book is happening, we're off to the races. Next up, oh, yeah, we write a contract. We have a contract department full of legal experts. They do that. We stay out of it as much as we can. Then next, then this person who is our author goes off and writes and creates the art for this book. Sometimes that's one person, as in the case of the book that Allison was waving around, she can really lay it down. That is this one person, Rachel Frankel, who both wrote the words and drew the pictures for that book. She wanted to write a book about women musicians. She wrote it, she illustrated it, she did the whole thing. Sometimes with a book like that, you might get two people working together, you know, a writer writing the words and an artist making the art. So it varies. There's a lot of different models, but basically those people go off, they make their stuff. That we typically give them maybe a year, maybe 9 months, depends on how far along they already are. And then they turn it in. And what they are turning into us is typically a manuscript, which is a Word document full of all the words that will go in the book, and high-res art of some kind, be that, again, illustration, photography, whatever it is. So we get this great big pile of high-res TIFFs and a Word document. And this is the point at which I go, hey, Allison, here you go. No, it's not quite yet. We have to edit the manuscript. We might do some image edit on the art, but the material form of this stuff does not change. You know, if we're editing a manuscript, we might go through many rounds of big edits, little edits, all kinds of edits. But at the end of the day, we're still handing Allison a Word document and a pile of high-res art. And at that point, let's see, did I get this right?
Yes.
Over to you.
Okay, over to me. So at this point, I really start taking more of a role. The designer would work up some sample chapters, maybe like take one chapter and design it in 2 or 3 different ways. And it's a way for me to familiarize myself with the content, and to figure out how I envision the look and feel of the whole book without designing the entire book. Because I'll want to share it, basically I'll share it with the other designers at Chronicle first, get their feedback, then I'll share it with the editor, get their feedback, and, you know, making little changes or large changes along the way. And then the editor will share with the author. And this process, like the editing process, it can go pretty quick if everybody's on the same page, or there can be a lot of back and forth, a lot of revisions as we get to something that everybody's happy with. And once everybody's happy, we can move on to galleys, which is there are a few rounds of galleys. The first galleys is called that because it's the first time that I lay out the entire book, interior of the book, and place everything, all the art, all the text, and I submit it to our managing editor, who then coordinates a proofreader to read over it, check for text issues, typos, grammar stuff. This has all been checked at the manuscript, but you know, the books are so dense, sometimes it definitely needs more than one go. And it'll also, the editor will check it, the editor will send it to the author, and everybody will coordinate their comments. So then it comes back to design. And then design, we do second galleys. So second galleys is, I make all the changes based on everybody's comments and then send out a new set. And depending on the project, we can go through this, let's see, twice more, final corrects and then mechanicals, and then what we call mech corrects, the mechanical corrects, that should be the final round. And once everything is all approved, the production developer will send it to the printer, and we'll start looking at proofs. And proofs are color outputs that are either directly from the printer who will be printing the book or from our in-house proofer. Over the years, we've gotten a pretty reliable in-house proofing system, so that a lot of times our production developer will print off the proofer and we'll review the color. Editors will review, we'll send it to the author to review, and everybody will make their comments. We'll make any tweaks we need to make in the files, and then we get to approval advances. And that is the entire book printed. And basically at this point, there really shouldn't be any issues because the printers, printed these. But we just review to approve. And then I think that is the last step. Then the author gets their copies, we get our copies, and hopefully it sells, 1 million copies. Did I miss anything?
It's kind of hilarious to do in like under 10 minutes, yeah. Something that takes like 2 years. But no, yeah, we hit all the highlights. Okay. So to kind of give some examples of what that process is like, that's all a little abstract the way we told it to you. So we wanted to talk a little bit about a few specific projects that we've worked together on recently, to just give you, okay, like what is this really like in real life? And the first one is this book called She Votes, How U.S. Women Won Suffrage and What Happens Next, by Bridget Quinn, illustrated by 100 women artists. So Bridget Quinn is a beloved author of ours. She had previously, I think, can you go to the next slide? I think she had, maybe we have a slide on here for her. Oh yeah, so before I get to Bridget, actually, I was going to say that this year, 2020, is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. And we found out about that fact a few years back. It kind of came on our radar, like, hey, did you know the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment is coming up? Like, that's exciting. So I got talking with Bridget Quinn. You can go to that slide now. Who is an author that we had worked with previously on a book called Broad Strokes that was about women in art history. Bridget's both a historian and an art historian, and she and I have the same first name, which is confusing. We get to have a lot of jokes about it. So she and I got chatting and about this 19th Amendment thing, and wouldn't it be so cool to do a book about that? Yes, she totally wanted to do a book about that. Like, this would be amazing. Let's do a history of, women's rights, women's voting rights in this country, and not just the 19th Amendment, but let's make it intersectional. Let's talk about what happened in the 100 years since. And then go on to the next slide here. And the big sort of revolutionary thing that we wanted to do was illustrate it with illustrations from 100 women artists, which everyone knew from the beginning was kind of crazy ambitious. Like, trying to organize 100 different people to illustrate a book is truly, it's herding the cats, right? It's a logistical nightmare. But we hired some help. We got some freelance help to help us organize outreach to all of these different amazing, cool women artists. And we did it. We got 100 different illustrations, illustrating different specific things that Bridget talks about all throughout the book. And of course, not surprisingly, we kind of knew this would happen. Many other people and other publishers and other authors published books about women's suffrage this summer. I mean, it was, we weren't the only ones who came up with this notion that it would be a good thing to make a book about right now. But we were actually the only people that I know of doing an illustrated book at all. And we were certainly the only ones doing a book illustrated by 100 women. So that really helped ours kind of stand out from the crowd. Not to mention, Bridget is also just an amazing and hilarious and smart writer. So it's both a really good read and fun to look at, which was really the goal from the beginning. It's one of those things where you have this vision in your head, and then 2 years later, you're like, wait, did we actually, the thing we actually made, did we make the thing we set out to make? And I think we did. You talk next, Allison. I actually have a copy. I'm going to go grab it.
Great. Yeah, well, I wanted Bridget to hear this part, but I can tell her later. So when I found out I was going to be the designer on this book, I quickly checked in with my colleagues. There it is. Woohoo! I don't have one yet. I'm so jealous.
Aha! I just got mine. Sorry,
awesome.
I'm just going to do this for a second and then.
Yeah, okay, I was just, I'm admitting my short-sightedness at the beginning of this project because I talked to a couple of my colleagues who had done a book, I think with 10 or 15 different artists recently, and it was I don't know, it was maybe like a Star Wars Women of the Galaxy, I can't remember, but I had been told to talk to them about how they worked with so many artists. And I went up to them and I said, we're thinking of doing 100 artists. And their jaws dropped to the floor and they were like, no way. It's like, you have to stop this. They really freaked me out. And so I remember I went down and I talked to Mirabelle, who was the project editor, and we talked to you and we're like, Bridget, anyway, we could do it with 10 artists and they each do 10 illustrations. And you're like, well, you're like, the author really loves this idea. I mean, you were very nice about it, but you were kind of like, no. So, but I gotta say,
100 artists. Like,
I gotta say, I'm sure that whatever process those people used in another publishing group, whatever we did was 100 times better because it was so smooth. And you know, Mirabelle had the craziest spreadsheet I have ever seen, tracking all the artists, their contact info, which thing they were illustrating, you know, but it was really worth it in the end. So I'm glad you pushed for that. That was quite a vision you had. So to talk a little bit.
We talk a lot actually about
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think we have a little bit of a lag. I was just going to say, we talk a lot about the vision for a project, that early on you try and make sure that the editor, the author, the team, the publishing group, the designer, that everyone is on the same page and has the same shared vision of what this thing is going to be. And then you can do hard things if you're all, you know, agreed and pointed in the same direction. But I think that, you know, when there are tiers is when not everyone has the same, you know, collective vision of what something is going to be or should be. So it's yeah, it definitely takes some back and forth sometimes to figure that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to hear about these.
Yeah.
Photos.
So right at the beginning, before we had the manuscript, I think Bridget Quinn had sent some of these photographs to me just as kind of visual reference. And I fell in love with the typography on these suffrage protest posters that the women are carrying. And I knew I wanted to incorporate some of that really bold, very condensed type kind of early 20th century typography in the book. And so this is one example. This is the intro chapter divider, but each chapter divider has some of this typography in it, which was very fun to work on. And I'll just show you some spreads from the book. This is Sojourner Truth, and I believe I have the artist's name. This is, oops. Who is that? Oh, the previous slide, the introduction, that art was by Libby Vanderploeg. Sojourner Truth is by Danny Pendergast. Oh, very cool part of, oops, I don't think you can see my screen. Sorry, I'll head back to Acrobat. Can you see it now?
We've just been on Sojourner Truth the whole time.
Oh, good. That was my plan. So this one was the one, Libby Vanderploeg. One of the blessings of this project was just seeing all this amazing art from illustrators that some of them I had heard of, some of them I had wanted to work with but never had the chance. Some of them, you know, they were fresh out of school and I had never heard of them, and they just did amazing work. This is the first Black sorority in the US, and it's them at a suffrage march. And this is by Jane Beard. And I believe this last piece of art is Anita Hill and Christine Blasey Ford, and it's by Christine Norrie. So I think you just with these few pieces, you can get a sense of the wide range of, you know, material and style that goes on throughout this book. It's kind of an amazing, in addition to being a great read about the history, it's kind of an amazing compendium of women illustrators today. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the cover process. These were this is some of our competition going into this. There were a ton of books coming out, as Bridget mentioned, about the suffrage movement in 2020. And all I really wanted to do was make ours look different and try to highlight the illustrations, the fact that even though some of these covers are illustrated, oops, sorry, we're going long. Should I wrap it up, you think? Okay, I'll just keep. Okay, so.
We can go quick. We'll go quick. We'll be quick.
Okay, we'll go quick, yeah. So just to breeze through, I had a lot of art to work with, obviously, but most of it was very specific in content to a specific moment in history, and wouldn't work for the cover, which had to be more broad. And also, you know, I really didn't want to do a multi-image cover. You can see the starts of one on the left of this page, but it just felt less impactful. I really wanted to just focus on one piece of art. So here you just see some attempts. I think that the second one in from the left is just kind of bland. I mean, it's a beautiful illustration, but without the people, you don't get the emotion of the suffragist movement. And when I started to get somewhere, when I started pulling actual protesters from art, and ended up feeling like pulling a few people from Libby Vanderploot's illustration just felt really strong. And I tried out some different layouts with these three women. And I tried it out. We were getting comments that some people felt these illustrations felt a little young, and we wanted to make it clear that this wasn't like a YA book. We're trying to appeal to all ages, which led me to try one version without any art, which I never really wanted to go there because the art is such an important part. And I felt like I was getting somewhere with this one on the right with just a single woman. But still, you know, I wanted to try it with kind of just to make sure the type felt really forceful and as full as it did in the protest photos. And this is where we landed. So, you know, the idea was that the typography is really strong and intense, and that the woman is just like poking her way into that frame. And I'm very happy with how it turned out. We have one quick project to talk about. Should we breeze through it?
Let's go through it really, really quick, just because
Okay.
I do want to be mindful of the time, but we have this and it's so cool. I'll be really fast. We wanted to do a book about the art of Ramona Quimby. The Beverly Cleary's classic Ramona Quimby children's books have been illustrated by 4 different primary illustrators, as well as a 5th cover illustrator. And they're just so beloved, been translated into hundreds of languages. You know, just everyone has the Ramona that they grew up with, the illustrations they love. And I thought it would be really fascinating to do a book showcasing this art and showing how it evolved over time, you know, how the history of the different eras, you know, what did it look like in the 60s? What did it look like in the 70s? What did it look like in the 90s? You know, I do want to call out the photos that Allison and the team put together for our chapter openers. There's a chapter about each of the Ramona books, and you guys staged like the most amazing photo shoot to make this stuff. So we have to pause here for a moment because it's so cool.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite parts of working on this book. I decided early on that since all the art in the inside of the books is one color, I needed to figure out a way to bring more color into our book. And I just loved the actual look of the original book covers so much that I just wanted to highlight them. So, you know, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to afford to purchase all of these original books, but luckily we had some issues with the art delivery, and it ended up that we needed to purchase some of them so that we could scan them and get the art from those copies. When the publisher, the original publisher we were working with, didn't actually have all the files that they originally thought they had. So that actually worked out because I had stacks and stacks of Ramona books at my desk. And we did not have a lot of money on this project. I mean, there was no budget for photography originally, so we scrounged. We had a great photographer who was a friend of friends came into the office, and I ran around town picking up all these supplies from 99-cent stores and other places. And we did the whole photo shoot in on the third floor where the design department is. And it was so much fun.
So cool. All right. Since we're running short of time, we should probably just plow through here and then talk briefly about careers, because I know you guys are a class devoted to being seniors and figuring out your next steps after graduation, coming out of the design department there. So I mostly want to let Allison talk about careers at Chronicle because I feel like that's probably the most relevant to your design degrees. So why don't you talk about that, Allison, and then I can briefly touch on like other careers outside of the design department if that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think the first thing I want to say is just that we do have a fellowship program that is currently on hold because of COVID-19 and you know, other things that are happening this year. We're not doing it this year, but we're hoping to start it up again for the following year. We don't have any answers on that yet, but I would say keep checking our website every now and then, and that's where the updates will be. Or, you know, our Instagram, other socials. So in terms of jobs at Chronicle for design, there are basically three major places. There's adult design, which is what I do. There's children's design, which is working on children's books. And there's brand design, which is working on Chronicle Books company stuff. And I would say some things that they all have in common is that we're all looking for really strong typography skills in your portfolios. And obviously, you know, if you're interested in children's books, we want your portfolio to be a little more geared toward that. Projects that have some sort of whimsy or, you know, kind of something that would appeal to kids. Not everything has to be like that, but if you have a very serious portfolio, it's going to be hard for us to make the connection to how you would work on children's books. And in terms of brands, if you're doing brand design, you would mainly be working on web stuff and some video stuff, some animated stuff. So a small bit of print design, but we'd want to make sure your web skills and your video and animation skills are pretty strong. And in terms of adult design, we'd really want to see examples of long form design, like design of, you know, a magazine or a book. And we're only need to see student projects. Like, we don't need to see that you worked for an insurance company for a summer and actually got something printed, but it's very boring. And, you know, we don't need to see examples of professional stuff. That'll be in your resume, but your portfolio should just be stuff that you love, stuff that has energy, stuff that feels fun. And, you know, I would suggest this goes for any job, but spend some time on our website, spend some time with our actual books and products, so that you really get a sense of the different styles that Chronicle Books products and books have.
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly to the rest of Chronicle, just in case there's anyone out there who has, you know, wider ranging interests. So our fellowship program, when it's up and running, assuming it kicks back in next summer, we hope, includes fellows both in the design department and in the editorial department. And I think fellowship programs and internship programs in general are probably the one way of getting your foot in the door if you're just trying to break into the publishing industry. Those types of, if they're good, they will be temporary positions, but they will be full-time. They will have benefits. They'll be like a real job, but it's just for a limited period of time. You know, maybe it's for 6 months or for a year. Ours is for a year. So, you know, looking at those kinds of opportunities, keeping an eye on Chronicle, but anybody else that you're interested in, as well as, you know, website for those types of programs, as well as just for general, you know, job openings. And, you know, they come and go. You know, we're not doing a ton of hiring right now because we're working from home and we're kind of, you know, locked down, but if someone leaves, we need to replace them. Like, a job opening could pop up tomorrow, you know, so keeping an eye on those job boards is always a good idea. Other careers in publishing besides design and editorial that people don't always think of are the production department, which is our department that focuses on printing. They work very hands-on and directly with our printers. They also make a lot of layout corrections, so they actually do have design skills and do, you know, a fair bit of hands-on, you know, design work as well. So that can be interesting.
Yeah, and I can say one word about that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I recently talked to one of our production developers to find out more about, you know, what kind of background they're looking for. And, you know, if you've done any coursework that deals with print production and, you know, the different techniques of printing, that would be wonderful. You know, a strong grasp on all the Adobe programs, essential. There are some colleges, my college did not have this at all, that have print production coursework. There's one at San Luis Obispo that I guess a lot of our production people went to because they have a really strong print production program. But you know, at the right moment and with the right skills that you've picked up from your classes and other professional experience, could definitely get into production without that specific degree.
Cool. Oh, and the one other thing I think you wanted to touch on was freelance designers.
Yeah, let me share this screen again. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this is for submitting to Chronicle. This is the website, chroniclebooks.com, our company submissions. This is for if you have a book idea, or if you want to submit your portfolio, you can go here. We do work with freelance designers. I would say we work with illustrators more than designers, freelance-wise, because we don't have in-house illustrators. So a lot of projects we are looking to hire illustrators, and a smaller amount of projects we do hire freelance designers. Yeah, so send your portfolios in and we take a look at them. semi-regularly, and we're always interested in meeting new designers and getting to know. We love working with people in the city, in San Francisco, instead of, even though we work with people all over the world, but there's something nice about working with designers and illustrators who are local.
I always find that page on the website a little confusing because it's two pretty separate things, but they're all together in one page, and you just have to keep scrolling down to get submission guidelines. Traditionally on a publisher's website are mostly about how to submit a book proposal, right? Like, I want to send in my idea for a cookbook or a children's book, and they have like detailed instructions of how to do both those things, and they're long, and they go on and on and on and on, and then you scroll all the way to the bottom, and when you get to the bottom, suddenly there's this thing about portfolio submissions. And you guys, of course, as design students, know exactly what a portfolio submission is, but a lot of people who are authors who are looking at that first part of the page get down there and are like, wait, what's this? So it's kind of for two completely different needs, but they're just glommed together in one place. So if you are looking at that from a freelance design perspective, just keep scrolling down to the bottom. It takes a minute. But I think that's it, unless there's anything else to add.
Yeah, we probably talked your ears off.
We ran a little long, but we have a lot to say.
Yeah. Usually this is the time when we would ask for questions, but since you guys are not there at the moment, you're watching this later. Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to answer any questions after the fact that you have.
Yeah, it's true. If you have questions and you want to give them to Josie, she can pass them along to us. We will type you up an answer. We're always, excited to be available to folks who are kind of starting on this journey, and, make this option, available and transparent to you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.